first thing you should ask the contracting officer about a solicitation?
First thing you should ask contracting when you're reaching out to them is there an incumbent? If you don't know what an incumbent is, it is a company already performing the good or service or has performed the good or service delivery in the past. There's a couple of reasons why we ask this question as the first question, okay? So firstly, it makes you sound like a more experienced contractor. New GovCons don't even know what an incumbent is, okay? So it's an intelligent, it's an informed question, and it makes you look like you know what you are doing. It conveys to the contracting officer that they are speaking with somebody who gets it, okay? They understand the space. And so it's a good first step forward. It's your first impression typically that you're making with them. And so you want that to be one of confidence and one that once again lets them know that you're not newbie, you're not green, and that you do know what you're doing. Secondly, why asking if there's an incumbent is a good question to start with is, well, it's really good information. Okay, so if this is a new need, that means, you know, this was either previously done by government employees and was never contracted out to a small business per se, or maybe there was a new facility built or something like that where the need could not exist, but now it does exist. So it's very helpful for you to know that. Also, it helps you out with pricing, okay? And what you should not do is take the previous award and just add your, you know, markup for inflation on it and submit. You have to be more methodical about it than that, because when you ask this question and you get the answer, and if there was an incumbent, sure, you can go look up the previous award value, and sometimes the contracting officer whom you're speaking with may even give you that award number or even the award value, right? But what you don't know is, were there contract mods? Okay, has the contract changed over a period of time? Is it still apples to apples? Is it, or has it changed? If there's been changes and you're not accounting for that, or trying to do some research on that, and you're just blindly taking a previous dollar value, you will actually be, you know, vastly incorrect about your pricing. But again, this is why we ask the question out of the gate. It gets us on the right track to move forward and lets us know, you know, additionally what more information we need to kind of put this puzzle together.
Is it better to email contracting or should you try to call them?
Okay, so I'm a big believer of like FaceTime, right? Not FaceTime the app, but getting as close to contracting as possible. And arguably a phone call is closer to contracting than an email, right? There's energy, there's vibe, there's, you know, all sorts of other like nonverbals that get conveyed. And you can kind of just get a feel for how open this person is, or if they're just being very cold to you. You know, you may not necessarily get that information over an email. So I always say to my students and anybody I'm working with, always start with a phone call, because you just don't know what additional information you're also going to receive. Versus, once again, an email, you ask 2 questions, you'll be lucky to get 2 answers, right? But if you just get somebody talking, and this does happen, guys, it's not the majority, it's the minority, but you will find these good contracting officers or contracting specialists who they'll just get talking, right? And you'll get to learn about, you know, how long they've been working there, you know, their family, their dog, you know, how many kids they have. This becomes the possibility for true relationship building. And that's, again, just not possible as such via an email compared to, you know, a phone call.
Are you allowed to ask questions after the Q&A deadline?
So kind of going with the same spirit, if you have the questions and the Q&A deadline has passed, I will still ask them. Sometimes your questions affect the outcome of the procurement, right? Say the Q&A deadline has passed. And for those of you who are out there saying, oh no, the Q&A deadline has already passed, like there's 0% chance they're not going to entertain you. Okay, well, I submit this, right? Say there's like no other engaged active bidders on this. So no other questions were brought up. Q&A deadline then passes. Then you submit your question, and let's say your question affects whether or not the scope can be performed. Say you've identified something either from the site visit, maybe this is a late, question that you're submitting, or just from the scope and your late proposal coming in, but you're leading with this question, and contracting goes, oh wow, you know what, they're actually right. Or they send that to their PM, their end user, their subject matter expert, their SME, right? And then they're like, oh, we didn't think of this. They may actually cancel the procurement, or at the very least, they may add a couple weeks to the proposal deadline for the requirement based on the question you submitted, even if the Q&A deadline has passed. So I would say it is circumstantial because situations like that can exist. But at the same time, if there's multiple active bidders engaged and you submit your questions late, it's also incredibly possible, more than likely, that those questions will not even be responded to. But you don't ask, you don't get, right? The squeaky wheel always gets the oil. And that's the spirit that I'm bringing to these answers today, to teach you guys, is that always try, right? Try on the phone. If you have real questions, the Q&A deadline has passed, the worst that they could say is no. So just like everything in government contracting, every bid is different, every opportunity is different. You got to be your own best advocate for your company. And if you need something, try, you just might get it.
How do you respond if contracting is not responsive when you initially reach out?
Okay, so guys, one of the things that I teach, every single one of my students is that when you're starting out with a requirement, before you start working on the proposal, even before you start calling teaming partners or lining up your team if you're self-performing, one thing that I always say is establish contact with contracting. Okay, and that is exactly kind of like what we've already covered. Like, start with the phone call, follow up with the email if you don't get any response, right? So that's one thing you can do, is follow up with the email. But my main answer for this one is, if contracting ends up not being responsive and it's been a few days and maybe you've got like 2 weeks before the proposal is due and maybe 7 or 8 days before the Q&A deadline, and they are not responsive, I say no bid it. I say move on. There are a lot of bidders who will have no contact with contracting all the way up to their proposal deadline being here. And then they respond. They don't get any sort of acknowledgement of receipt on their proposal, their offer, and then they just never hear from contracting. What a waste of time. What a waste of energy that could have prevented by you deciding, making the decision. I even include this as part of my students' bid no bids. Including in the decision, making it so important that if contracting is not responsive at the beginning, you're not going to be there to show up at the end. Or in other ways of putting it, only responding to opportunities where contracting has proven to be responsive initially, because then you can follow up on that thread time and time again, because they're responsive. Now you have a dialogue of history, right? And even if you have the phone call, you always follow up with an email, bullet pointing the things that you guys covered so that you get that thread going. That way, if you do have RFIs, that way, if there is a site visit, that way, if you do have a late Q&A, the probability of everything gets raised potentially to being in your favor. But too many get romantic about the deal. Oh, it's a really good deal, I want to go after it. And less romantic about, is it foreseeable that contracting is going to be responsive, helpful, say even giving at the end debrief feedback, right? Like, this is all indication of how they're going to be throughout your entire life cycle of this opportunity. And if it's already starting out on a bad foot, that's my point. And I would submit to you that I wouldn't go after any opportunities, because I and my students have wasted too much time investing energy and resources, hard-earned, energy, time, money, all this stuff for contracting, for them to not even respond. Hope that makes sense.
What do you do if a form is missing that is required for your proposal, or if contracting is asking for something that doesn't make sense? Right.
So guys, next, do not put contracting officers on the pedestal. They do make mistakes. For example, you may come across a solicitation where they're requesting SF 1449, or for you to sign an acknowledge amendment SF 30 form, and then they don't give that to you. What you should not do is go crazy trying to find it when it's not there. And you certainly shouldn't be going on the internet on your favorite search engine trying to download these things because it's not there, because you don't want to be incomplete. No. Contracting should be providing that to you. So what you should do in these situations, that's when you submit a question. That's when you submit a formal RFI, or a request for information in writing, a solicitation number, company name, right? Sir, ma'am, get straight to the question. Do not write long paragraphs. Number your questions if you have multiple of them, and just get to the point. And if, say, you're referencing something in the solicitation or the scope of work, also include that page number reference so they can be short, quick, to the point to find what you're asking and respond to you. Again, it increases the probability of getting your questions answered. And again, you want to do that through submitting a RFI, request for information question, to contracting.
If you personally attend the site visit, will you be able to meet with and speak to the contracting officer?
So, good question. Usually no. Usually contracting officers are not present during a site visit. I've seen it occasionally. It's not something that I would bank on. Typically, who you will see, who is also in a very important party, is who would be the contracting officer's representative, also known as the COR, the COR. They are typically the ones who will kind of walk you through the site. You can ask some questions, and then they'll probably tell you to resubmit those questions so they can post those answers so that everybody has the information, not just you or not just whoever was at the site visit. Again, sometimes they will be there, but usually it's going to be the COR, or maybe not. Maybe it's not even the COR. Maybe it's whoever's available. We see that too. It could just be some kind of like random person who's in the base, in the site, at the facility, whatever you're looking at. It could just be them, and then you never hear or see from them again. So guys, none of this is important. None of this matters fully unless you know how to write compliant and competitive proposals. And in the age right now, especially these last couple of years with AI, GovCon software taking all over the place, it can be hard to know where to go to build a strong proposal for the federal government that's built off of fundamentals. It's built off of things that do not change. And that's why I created GovRFP. So GovRFP is the proposal writing system that I've taught to my students for a number of years. And this last year, I've really dialed it in. I've really updated it. And I've made the first 3 modules accessible kind of as my free gift to you guys so that you can try it out. And if it's something that you want to enroll in and get the entire training, you certainly can. But everybody can check it out. And you can check that out by visiting my website, GovKidMethod.com. Click the GovRFP tab at the top and just click the button that says unlock the free modules or get started with the free training. No credit card required. Just put in your email address and you can get on the path to writing your first or your next government proposal. I highly recommend this for new, but also for intermediate level proposal writers. If you've written proposals, my guess is there's still a lot that you're going to benefit from this training. So I do recommend that everybody checks it out, especially because the first 3 modules are free for you. So smash the like button for the algorithm today. That will do it, guys. We are the fastest growing federal contracting channel as of late here on YouTube, at least. So if you want to be part of our growing community, I'd love to have you consider subscribing to the channel. If you have any questions or takeaways, I do check those, drop those down on the comments. And again, check out govkidmethod.com to get in that free training right now. If you're at home or at your computer, you got 30 minutes, why not check out the free training at this site? So until next time, guys, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.